Hi there, Taboo Science listeners. This is a very special Q&A episode where I talk about my experience making the Philias miniseries, all about the science of kinks and fetishes. If you're brand new to the podcast, I'd recommend pressing stop on this one and listening to another just to get a feel for what this show is about. You can always come back to this one if you want to. The first episode of Philias is the episode entitled How Many Kinks Exist, and that's a great place to start. For this episode, I recruited podcasting celebrity, Taboo Science listener, and my coworker, Arielle Nissenblatt, to interview me. I hope you like what you hear. I'll be back at the end to let you know the future plans for the podcast. Take it away, Arielle.
My name's Arielle Nissenblatt. I am a big-time podcast listener. I have a podcast recommendation newsletter called Earbuds Podcast Collective, and I've been working in the podcast space since 2017. Right now, I am Ashley's coworker at Descript. I am on the community team there. So I live and breathe podcasts both in my professional and in my personal life. And I am here today because I am going to interview Ashley about Taboo Science. I have been listening for a few years now. I am especially a huge fan of the series that just wrapped up that I think we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about today. And I think everybody should be a fan of this show. So I'm here to spread the word.
Yay! I'm super excited to talk to you. So let's get into it. Let's go.
Okay. So we have a bunch of questions here today, some that I have written, some that you have written that you kind of want to ask yourself, but you're going to have me do it. And then we also have a bunch of questions from the internet, both from YouTube and from social media, from the people that have been following Taboo Science for some time now. So let's get started with some questions that I have for you. First, I think this is front of mind for me is why did you decide to do a mini series on kink?
Yeah, I guess I wanted to do it because I have this really big database of different topics that are options for covering on the show. And I started adding a lot of different kinks. And I realized that I could just dive into all of them in one miniseries. There's also just sort of a strategy to it. I had heard that miniseries are a good way to like market your show and to do something new and get people like reinvested in it. And so I thought this would be the perfect way to kind of, to figure it out. And what I didn't realize over doing a miniseries is that it's really cool to start seeing the patterns between the related topics, and you kind of become a little bit of an expert in the thing that you're covering versus covering a bunch of disparate topics and kind of having to learn on the go every single time. You start to be like, oh yeah, no, I remember this fact from this other topic, and so we can tie them together. So I really loved it. It was great. I want to do it again.
In the past, did you do any miniseries that made you want to do this miniseries, or is this your first one?
This is my first one. Yeah.
Cool. Mini is an interesting word because you did a lot of episodes on kink.
I did, yeah. I guess
how many altogether?
9.
That's a lot.
Let me make sure.
That's a big mini series.
Yeah. I think I meant for it to be smaller than this, and then
Kinks
I ended up. Yeah, they just kept coming up. I just had to. There were more and more that I wanted to do. So, yeah.
Okay, so now let's get into the content of the mini series on kink. Did you have any preconceptions at the beginning of your exploration into these taboo topics that were shattered or that were reinforced?
So I think, like, I've always been very open-minded about kink, and like I think it's very, what people are into is like that's up to them. It's not, I'm not going to yuck your yum, but I definitely had a few that I was like, well, that one's weird, or like that one's, I mean, people are, I don't know about that one. Like, why would anybody be into that? Or, and I definitely had some just like judgy thoughts that I just couldn't get rid of, about a few different ones. And I shattered them completely. Like I just, wow. I mean, it completely, learning about all of these kinks kind of made me realize that like, they're all the same. It's all the same. It's all just stuff that we find ways. I don't want to say we're wired for it. So it's like, I'm trying to figure out a better way to say it. Like we grow up, we experience the environment, we experience things that turn us on that kind of wire our brains in a new way, and then we're into that thing, and then that thing is the thing that brings us pleasure. And it's like it doesn't really matter what it is. Some people have things that are really common, some people have things that are like way more niche, but they're all kind of just flavors of the same thing. So I feel like now if I learn about a new kink that I've never heard of before, I process it a lot better. I process it of just like, oh, cool. That's very cool that someone could be into that. I totally understand.
Right.
Yeah.
Our brains work in mysterious ways.
They do. Yeah.
Yeah. I first was exposed to the kinks beyond, the classic ones that you hear of, like foot fetishes, which is, I think, your last episode. It was your white whale, as you called it.
It was.
And some of the other, like, I don't want to call them mainstream. They're not mainstream, but they're kinks for a reason, right? They're paraphilias for a reason.
Yeah.
But, like ABDL, I heard about for the first time listening to Dan Savage's podcast, Savage Love.
Right.
And a bunch of other ones like that I learned by listening to Dan Savage in like 2016. And that's what first exposed me to this. So I feel like me listening to your miniseries, I was sort of desensitized to oh my God, people are into that, right? So it's very interesting, and I'm curious how other people took it. Did you get any people reaching out to say, like, this is either super inappropriate or appropriate? Did anybody get mad?
So the only one that anyone ever got mad about was the zoophilia episode. And a good number of people got mad about that one.
Really? What, on YouTube?
On YouTube, I got some Instagram DMs. And I think the big thing was there's a consent issue there with animals.
Right.
And which I tried my best to cover that and kind of show
I feel like you did.
where they, where this community is coming from there. And I think a lot of people thought that I didn't come out strong enough to say that, like, it's wrong. But like, that's not really what the show is there for.
Yeah, you're not an activist in this.
Yeah. Like, I'm here to humanize groups of people, and I humanized that group of people. And that's, I was successful in that. And I think there were still a lot of people who thought that that's not what I should have done. And yeah, you know what? To be completely honest, like that's still on my mind. I'm still constantly processing that, because some of this stuff is the most controversial topics that I've ever covered in my life. So that's a new skill that you have to learn that I feel like I am still learning. So I'm not saying that those people are like 100% wrong, but I do feel like that's not the purpose of my show. And if you want to hear a show that like goes after zoophiles, you can find a ton of them. There are a lot of people who are against
villainize
that. So
yeah.
Otherwise the feedback has been it's mostly people like emailing me saying like, this was such a humanizing episode. Like, I feel like either they're in the community or they had heard about it, and they really appreciated how like nuanced and sensitively I covered a lot of the topics. So yeah, most of the feedback has been good.
So in past episodes, all of the other taboo topics that you've covered leading up to this, what would you say on average, how many emails would you get per episode? How many comments would you get on YouTube? And then what I'm getting at here is, how much did it spike from this miniseries?
Yeah, the feedback has spiked a lot from this miniseries. In the beginning, there still was, it ramped up. And actually, YouTube, I've had this whole process with YouTube, but maybe I'll mention too. But like with YouTube, the feedback has just skyrocketed. But yeah, generally, like per episode, maybe I'll get 2 to 5 emails, and then YouTube comments go from anywhere from 10 to, boy, I think the biggest one has like 50 on it, or maybe more. I haven't actually looked recently, but yeah, lots of feedback, a lot more feedback than I am used to as a podcaster, for sure.
I think a lot of podcasters have trouble getting any feedback at all.
Yeah.
But if you decide to cover a topic that a lot of people are going to have opinions about, that's one way. That's one way, and you do it well. That is one way of getting people to slide into those DMs.
Totally.
Ashley, do you have one most important thing that you've learned? Can you pinpoint a few lessons or one particular lesson?
Yeah, I think I think the biggest thing I've learned is that we all experience shame. I think this podcast has really given me an education in shame. And that shame is something that when we experience it, our knee-jerk reaction is to hide it and to cover it up and to not address it. And doing that causes all of the problems. It just seeps into every part of your life, and it poisons your relationships, and it just makes it so that you can't live as a full human. And I think that what I've learned is that if you are experiencing shame, the best thing you can do is talk to someone about it that you trust, either a friend, if you have someone that you trust, or a therapist. And obviously with kink, it's like you have to find the right therapist, because therapists can also cause harm with that too. But yeah, I think it's like shame is such a universal, and also the reaction to shame is such a universal. And I think it's just I've realized like how important it is to like get that out of your system, and like, because as soon as you let it out into the world, it really, I think from what I've heard from all the people I've talked to, is like as soon as you get it out, you find out that it's actually not as bad as you thought it was.
Yeah.
And suddenly it dissipates. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, that's part of why podcasts like this and Reddit forums and other sorts of groups are so important for people to be able to search for online, so that they don't feel alone, so that they don't feel like something's wrong with them.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So thank you for creating. Ashley, how did you get people to talk about such sensitive topics on this podcast? And where I'm coming to from that is, I know that you work really hard to source the right guests for the right episodes. You go after them, and sometimes it takes a really long time. So you had a combination in this series of like professors and people who've done research, and then people who are advocates for the community, the kink community that they're in. So how did you find all of those guests?
Yeah. So from the very beginning, I took my kind of template from my asexuality episode, which was the first time that I had a researcher and someone from the community in the episode. And I felt like it made it so well-rounded, and you got to hear the science, but you also got to hear the emotion and like the personal experience of it. And I knew that I wanted to do that with this. So the researchers were relatively easy, as long as I could, convince them that I'm not a crackpot, and I'm going to make their research, make them look good. And then, and the way that I did that was every time I got another researcher on board, I would just send that list to the next person, be like, I have these people who are going to talk to me. And sometimes they'd be like, oh yeah, no, I'm a big fan of that person. I'll go on your show.
Yeah.
So that really worked. And then for the people from the community, that was something that it took me a really long time to crack that, because nobody wants to talk about, their private life on a podcast. And so I didn't really know. At first I was like, maybe Reddit, like maybe I can find. So I sent some things out to people on Reddit, and I never got any responses. And I knew few people who were into some of these things. I won't say who, but like one of the people that I interviewed on the show actually is like a very long time friend of mine. And I was just like, oh yeah, definitely I'm going to talk to them about this. But finally, the way that I cracked it was podcasters. Like podcasters, there are already people who are podcasting about this. Yeah, they're already out there. Maybe their faces aren't out there, but their voices are out there, and they seem like they would be happy to talk to me. And that ended up being a really nice double-edged sword, because not only were they willing to talk about it and able to talk about it, but also, you know of all people.
Are you talking cross promos?
Yeah, like getting other podcasters on your show, and then they talk about it on their podcast, and then other people come on to listen. So that was a great, like a winning strategy that I landed on, that I was super
Audience
happy
growth.
with. Yeah.
That's great. Any other controversies that stand out to you?
I had a couple comments about the furry episode. Just in like privately from people who maybe were in the community or adjacent to the community, who actually sort of pushed back on me saying that it's not a fetish, because and I've tried to kind of wrestle with this too, because it is very clear that there is a furry fetish, and it is very clear that like furry pornography is a huge part of that community. And the media has been so awful to furries that there's this like knee-jerk like pushback on like, no. This is totally not a sex thing. There's no sex involved. This is all about just fun animals. And it's like some people kind of were suggesting that I didn't actually delve into the sex part as much as I could have, or even not delve in, but just like I think I was protesting too much that it wasn't a sex thing, whereas like the sex thing actually is a bigger part of the community than I portrayed. And and I think with that was just like I really wanted to do right by my guests, and my guests were saying that.
There's a line.
Yeah, it's hard.
Right. There's a line. You're also not employed by a journalistic outlet that makes it so that you must equally represent both sides. This is up to you ultimately.
Mm-hmm. It's tricky.
And yeah, you can put disclaimers in there. You can say, here's my methodology, here's my ideology, here's why I'm thinking this, but that would be a boring episode. So you put out the episode that is entertaining and is educational and is respectful to the people whose time you are asking for as your guests, and then also your listeners. I think that providing them with a product that teaches them is great. And then obviously you are admitting to some of the potential shortcomings by having this episode.
Right. Yeah.
So let's now move to some questions from listeners. Are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. This question comes from Paul, who is your follower on Twitter. Paul asks, what was the most surprising thing that you learned, and what was the most fascinating thing that you learned?
I learned a ton of fascinating things. I think the thing that comes to mind most right now that it didn't make it into an episode, but I think I might make a YouTube short on it or something, is that in the ABDL community, the diapers they buy are made by the same companies that make like medical supply diapers. And these companies basically, they saw that there was this community that was buying their diapers, not for a medical need. And they were like, oh, well, what do they want? Like, what, we should talk to them. And they did some user research. And they're like, oh, they want cute pictures on them. They want cute colors. Like, okay, we'll do that. And they made like a bunch of lines of different cute ABDL diapers, which I feel like if you look at so many other industries where as soon as anything, like, for example, I'm listening to a wonderful series on the history of the magic wand vibrator. And what they did, the Hitachi makes all sorts of like kitchen machines and stuff like that, and they had this personal massager that ended up becoming this like legendary thing in the sex world. And they were like, oh, we're just going to stop making it because we feel uncomfortable about that, even though it was selling incredibly well. And someone actually, a different company had to come in and be like, do not do that, like sell it to us. We'll continue to make it. But like that, like capitalism didn't save the day there, right? It was just sort of like, they were like, no, this is associated with sex. We don't want to be associated with sex, which is what so many companies would do. And I think it's so cool that this diaper company was like, yeah, okay, cool. We'll make some stuff for you. Great. More diapers for everybody.
Wow.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
So that's surprising and fascinating. Did you want to add something else?
Another one that maybe didn't make it in was that in the just general Kinks 101 episode, Ayla told me that violent porn is actually most popular among women, not men.
Whoa.
And so a lot of people say like, we need to stop violent porn because it hurts women. And she pointed out that like putting a stop to violent porn actually would hurt women more because like they're the main consumers of this stuff, which was so surprising to me too.
There you go.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
So not only do you teach, you also learn.
Yes.
Thank you to Paul for that question. Let's go to this question from YouTube from Jasmine Stealth 1. They write, after looking at this, I looked at your web and I wonder, with a platform like this and being introduced to all these things, has it affected your personal intimate spaces, or are you just fascinated? And of course, this is a very personal question. You can choose how much you would like to tell us and how much you would like to keep to yourself.
Totally. So yeah, basically the question is like, did you introduce any of this into your own sex life? Which no, I didn't. I'll just say that I didn't. My sex life is the same. But what I was actually expecting was for me not for my libido to just tank because I was talking about all these things and like in like this very clinical way and very academic way. That didn't happen either. Really nothing is different. There's for me
Nothing
nothing is
happened.
different.
You just learned.
I just learned. I learned and I felt maybe I felt a little bit more comfortable about my own sexuality, just like because being able to talk about this stuff just is, it's a way to break taboos, right? So that made me, I mean, more comfortable about my own sexuality in my own like personal life. It still sucks to talk about my podcast with like professional colleagues, but yeah, not a lot changed with that.
Does your family know that you made this miniseries?
My mom listens to every episode, which is
Hi.
a little mortifying. But I do like to say she's the one who taught me what circumcision was at the dinner table when we were eating. What were we eating? Okra. It was okra in
Oh, okay.
gumbo, and she like peeled
Delicious.
off the outside of the okra to show what that. Because I was like, I don't know what is this.
Is she a
I was
doctor?
like, no, no,
That's
she's a lawyer.
an impressive analogy.
Yeah. I was just
Wow.
I was like a tween, and I was like, what's circumcision? She's like, well. And she showed me. So she doesn't blush about this stuff. So I guess that's where I get it.
Going back to Jasmine's question about whether you introduced this into your life, I think another question we can pull from that is, how did learning about ABDL make you feel differently about motherhood because of the connection to diapers, of course?
Right. That was another one that I thought I was going to feel really uncomfortable about. I really, when I got into it, I was like, this could bring up some weird feelings for me. And it didn't because I was so happy about that, because the thing is, when I learned more about it, it's just a game. It's so far removed from actual babies and actual, like, any of that. It's like, I mean, I love, to bring in Dan Savage, kink is cops and robbers with your pants down. Like, that's it. It's a game. It's a role play. It doesn't really have a lot of connection to real parenthood, real babies, real diapers. So it actually, I was fine. A lot of this was like that. A lot of this I was like, oh, I don't know. And then it was great. It was great.
And then you were fine.
Yeah.
You're so resilient.
Actually, I will say the one that I did have to do a lot of thinking about, coming back to this topic again, but zoophilia. I had to,
Of course.
I think it took me, because they pitched me on that. And
Yeah.
at first I was like, no. And then I thought about it for a few weeks. And then I decided to do it. It was basically like I had to just educate myself for a little while and kind of come around to it, which I think was one of the reasons that some of these comments were frustrating, because I think I may have started out where they were, and then I thought about it. Like I really put in some hard work.
You did
to
the
like,
thinking, yeah.
Yeah, and so I just saw that these people hadn't thought about it, and it was frustrating. But also, like, yeah, they just haven't had as much time with it as I have.
Yeah, they need to be exposed to it, and then maybe over time their minds open a bit.
Yeah.
But they would probably say, I don't want to open my mind to this, right? There's a
Sure.
lot of layers here.
True.
We have one more question from a listener. This one comes from Oliver, who sent in the question via email. I'm curious whether there are any kinks/fetishes you wanted to cover but couldn't, or any newly emerging kinks which need more research before they can be covered.
So there's so many kinks that need more research. There's a whole ocean of kinks that have not been looked at all research wise. And so that's why this is a mini series, right? It's like I can't do an entire podcast that's like 100 episodes long on this. Whereas, some people have. Why are people into that? Tina Horn's podcast that she just talked about on the most recent episode, they do talk about different kinks, but they don't have that research angle. So they have a little bit more freedom there. But for me, I'm limited. But one that I really wish that I had covered was actually sent in by someone via email, was basically like sclerophilia, or like a love of just gross stuff, which kind
interesting.
of goes in with
You
like,
alluded to that in one of the episodes.
Yeah. So I like touched on it, but like people,
Yeah.
they were asking about like people who buy soiled underwear on the internet. Like what's up with that?
Oh, that fits into that?
Dirty bathwater or things like that.
Oh my God.
Yeah. Yeah. And I looked into it and it just, there isn't a lot there. I would also have loved to do one on just like pee fetishes. Not a lot there either. Yeah. Those are the two, like just the gross stuff. Yeah.
That one gets a lot of coverage in media, I think, the pee fetish, but yeah, I guess not enough people doing research on it.
Yeah, I was able to do a tiny bit for that like sampler episode that I did, but I would have loved to do a whole one. Oh well.
Okay, those were our questions from your audience. Thank you to Paul, Jasmine Stealth One, and Oliver. Much appreciated. And I think more people will probably have questions as they continue to discover your podcast. So where can they go to continue asking those questions?
Yeah, email me at ashley@tabooscience.show or just tweet at me at tabooscience.
Yeah. Awesome. Ashley, any other questions, comments that you'd like to make before we close out this Q&A episode?
I feel like I just want to make it clear that like I am a straight married mother that like got into this. So it feels very, as much as I've always been interested in this and I am a Dan Savage listener and I've just like to think and talk about this stuff, I feel like an outsider. I feel like an outsider looking in on these different communities, and like at first it would like make me blush, and I feel like I've become desensitized to it a lot over the time.
Except at work.
Except at work. And so, yeah, people are like, oh, what is your podcast about? And I was like, let's change the subject. But it's been so fulfilling and great. And I've loved everyone that I've met through it. And it's changed me a bit. So that's been, it's been really nice.
And you even got to tackle your white whale of doing an episode on foot fetishes.
Yes.
So if you haven't listened to that episode yet, listeners, viewers, definitely go back, because that's, would you call that it's your white whale? It's your magnum opus.
It was my white whale because it was first on my list. I was like, obviously I'm going to do one on foot fetishes. And then I just could not get anyone to respond to me to go on it. And eventually I pulled it off. I finally got, Justin Leigh Miller and Tina Horn on there. But I was actively attempting to do that while creating the rest of the season. And finally I got it all together. Yeah.
So podcasters, creators, if you have a specific interview in mind, keep pushing. You never know when it'll come through, and make a really great episode.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Ashley, thank you so much for making this miniseries and for inviting me to ask you questions about it. I really appreciate it, and I look forward to the next miniseries and regular episodes.
Yay! Thanks so much, Arielle. This is great. Thanks for listening. Hope you sated your curiosity. If you have more questions, definitely reach out. How to do that, again, is by emailing ashley@tabooscience.show or tweeting at tabooscience. This is the final episode of Season 4, Philias, and I will be taking a long break before Season 5. So if you want to stay updated on what's next, subscribe to the newsletter. Just head to tabooscience.show and enter your email address in the newsletter box. In the meantime, why not give the show a rating and review on Apple Podcasts? It'd be really nice. Thank you truly for listening. When we come back, I hope you tune in to Season 5. I won't tell anyone.